Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back to the ancient world, to the very heart of its greatest city. We are going to the Roman Forum. But we are not here to see the legions or the senators. We are here to visit a small, circular temple, and the secret, sacred world of the women who guarded it. They were the Vestal virgins, arguably the most powerful and revered women in all of Rome, who lived under a single, profound vow, the breaking of which carried a terrifying punishment. Frankly, it was one of the most demanding and dangerous religious roles in the ancient world, a life of immense privilege and even more immense pressure. We are going to gently explore their quiet, hidden, and sacred world. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always a huge encouragement. For those of you already settled in, I'd love to see where and when you're listening from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. I'm recording this in the very quiet, early hours of a Monday morning, just after 6 a.m., here in Chicago, Illinois. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle whir of the fan fades, replaced by the distant, low rumble of a great city. You hear the murmur of voices speaking Latin, the rattle of chariot wheels on stone. But you are inside, in a grand and intimidating room with high, painted ceilings and marble floors. The air is cool and smells of incense and old papyrus. Your name is Licinia. You are 6 years old. And you are terrified. You are holding your father's hand, and your grip is very tight. You are standing in a line with 19 other little girls, all from the great, noble, patrician families of Rome. You are all dressed in your finest clothes. And you are all being silently inspected by a stern, imposing, and very old man in the robes of the Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome. This is the selection ceremony. A new Vestal virgin is needed to join the sacred college, and you are one of the candidates. The requirements are strict. You must be between the ages of 6 and 10. You must be freeborn, of a noble family, and your parents must be living. And you must be physically perfect, free from any blemish or defect that would make you unworthy of serving the goddess. It is a strange and frightening combination of a beauty pageant, a job interview, and the lottery, all rolled into one. And you are about to find out if you have won or lost. At 6 years old, it is very, very difficult to tell the difference. The Pontifex Maximus says a solemn prayer to the goddess Vesta, and then the selection is made, by the drawing of lots, to show that it is the will of the gods. A small clay tablet is drawn from a golden bowl. He reads the name on it. It is your name. A quiet gasp goes through the room. Your father's hand tightens on yours for a moment. He is filled with a deep, solemn pride. His daughter has just been granted one of the greatest honors a Roman family can receive. His family's status has just been elevated. He has secured a direct, sacred connection to the very heart of the Roman state. You, on the other hand, are mostly just scared. And you want to go home. Historians debate the true nature of this selection process. Was it a genuinely voluntary act of piety, a great honor that noble families actively competed for? Or, given the immense, 30-year commitment and the terrifying potential punishment for failure, were some families reluctant to give up their daughters? Was the selection sometimes a more political process, a way for the Pontifex Maximus to honor one family or to bind another more closely to the state religion? The Pontifex Maximus now approaches you. He is a kind-faced man, but his eyes are serious. He looks at your father, and then he looks at you. He holds out his hand. Your father gently lets go of your hand, and places it in the hand of the high priest. The moment of separation has come. You are about to trade your life of toys, of playing in the sun-drenched garden of your family's villa, for a new life. A life of solemn ritual, of immense responsibility, of quiet seclusion, and of secrets. It is a very abrupt end to your childhood. There is no easing into it. The high priest is about to lead you away, to perform the ancient, solemn ritual that will sever your old family ties forever, and make you a daughter of the Roman state. The Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of Rome, holds your small hand in his. His grip is firm but not unkind. He leads you to the center of the grand room, away from your family. Your father and mother recede, their faces a proud but painful blur. This is the moment of separation. The formal, and legally binding, ceremony of your induction is about to begin. This ritual is called the captio, which literally means the capture. The high priest, acting as the representative of the Roman state, is ritually capturing you from your family. He places his other hand on your head, and in a loud, clear, and ancient formula that has been spoken for centuries, he says, Te amata capio. I take you, Amata. Amata, the beloved one, is not your name. It is the new, ritual name you are given, the title of a Vestal novice. And with those simple words, the entire course of your life is changed. The legal bond to your father, the all-powerful patria potestas which gives a Roman father absolute authority over his children, is ritually and permanently severed. You are no longer the daughter of your father. You are now a daughter of Rome, a priestess of the goddess Vestal. It is a strange and profound paradox. At the age of 6, at the very moment you are entering one of the most strictly controlled and disciplined lives in the entire empire, you have also just become one of its most legally liberated and independent women. A normal Roman woman would remain under the legal authority of a male guardian, her father, or her husband, for her entire life. But you, as a Vestal, are now sui juris, legally independent. You can own property. You can write your own will. You can even testify in a court of law. It is a legal status you will not understand for many years, but it is a powerful one. The ceremony continues. You are led to a stool, and one of the senior Vestals, an older, serene-looking woman, comes forward with a pair of shears. The long, beautiful hair of your childhood is ritually cut off. This act is another powerful symbol, the shedding of your old, private life. Your shorn hair will later be hung as an offering on a sacred, ancient lotus tree. Then, you are taken to a small chamber and your fine, colorful child's tunic is removed. You are dressed, for the first time, in the simple, austere, and deeply symbolic garments of a Vestal. The robes are made of pure, white linen. Your hair is now bound up in a complex and archaic style known as the Sani crines, a series of 6 braided locks that was also, traditionally, the hairstyle worn by a Roman bride on her wedding day. So you are dressed in the white of purity, and you wear the hairstyle of a bride. But you are a bride whose husband is the eternal spirit of Rome itself, and your marriage is a sacred duty that will last for the next 30 years. Historians still debate the full meaning of this unique, liminal status. The Vestals were not wives, but they were not considered unmarried spinsters in the usual sense. They occupied a third, sacred category, a state of permanent, holy maidenhood. Did this give them a unique spiritual power, standing outside the normal classifications of female life? Or did it simply isolate them, cutting them off from the normal, human bonds of family and community? But you are only 6 years old. You do not understand these complex ideas of legal status or sacred marriage. You only understand that your parents are gone, your familiar clothes have been taken away, and your hair has been cut off. You are scared, and you are deeply, profoundly homesick. There are no toys in your new life. There are no bedtime stories from your mother. There is only the cool, echoing marble, the sharp, clean smell of incense, and the calm, serious faces of the older priestesses who are now to be your only family. It is a very grown-up world for a very small child. The induction is complete. You are now a Vestal novice. The Pontifex Maximus takes your hand again. He leads you out of his official residence and into the bright, noisy, overwhelming world of the Roman Forum. And he leads you towards the building that will now be your home, your school, your prison, and your entire world for the next 3 decades. You are going to the house of the Vestals. The Pontifex Maximus leads you by the hand, out of his official residence and into the bright, noisy, and overwhelming chaos of the Roman Forum. This is the very heart of the known world, a great, open space crowded with senators in their white togas, merchants shouting their wares, and lawyers arguing their cases. But as you pass, a bubble of sacred silence seems to move with you. The crowds part. People fall silent, and they bow their heads. They are not looking at you, a small, frightened, and confused child. They are looking at the simple, pure white robes you are now wearing. They are bowing to the new Vestal. Your new home is just a short walk away, at the very foot of the great Palatine Hill, where the emperors live. It is a large, magnificent, and beautiful building, but its walls are high, and its entrance is guarded. This is the Atrium Vesti, the house of the Vestals. You step inside, and the noise of the Forum is instantly cut off, replaced by a profound and echoing quiet. You are standing in a vast, open courtyard, surrounded by a 2-story, colonnaded portico. In the center of the courtyard are long, rectangular pools of clear, still water, and gardens planted with roses and violets. The air smells of damp earth, of flowers, and of the faint, clean scent of incense. This is your new home. It is grander and more luxurious than your father's great villa. It is, in every sense, a palace, a magnificent public building funded entirely by the Roman state for the comfort and upkeep of its 6 most sacred priestesses. But it is also a convent, a school, and a very beautiful, very quiet, and very secure prison. You will not be permitted to leave these grounds without a formal escort for a very, very long time. Here, you are met by your new family. There are 5 other Vestals. 2 of them are young girls like you, novices in the first stage of their training. 2 are adult women in their 20s, the active priestesses who perform the most important rituals. And 1 is an elderly, serene, and deeply imposing woman, her face a mask of quiet authority. This is the Virgo Vestalis Maxima, the chief Vestal. She is now your mother, your headmistress, and your absolute commander. The life of a Vestal, you will learn, is one of strict, almost military, discipline and ritual. But it is not a life of poverty. You are shown to the set of rooms that will be your own. It is a spacious and well-appointed apartment, with mosaic floors, painted walls, and even its own private bath with running water. The vow of poverty taken by the Christian monks we have visited in other stories is not a feature here. The Vestals were expected to live a lifestyle of wealth and comfort befitting their incredibly high status. The gods, it seems, did not mind if their most sacred priestesses had underfloor heating. Historians debate the level of personal freedom the Vestals had within their own home. While their public lives were highly ritualized and controlled by ancient tradition, was the Atrium Vestia space where they could relax, form deep and lasting friendships, and pursue their own private interests? Or was it a place of constant, formal observation and hierarchical pressure, even in their most private moments? Your new rooms are beautiful, but they are empty of all the familiar things of your childhood. Your toys are gone. Your family is gone. The reality of your new, strange, and isolated life begins to sink in. You are a very small, very lonely child in a very large, very grand, and very intimidating new house. It is the first night at the world's most prestigious and most frightening boarding school. You are 6 years old. You miss your mother. And you are about to begin a 30-year education in the sacred art of keeping a fire from going out. It is a lot to take in. That evening, as you sit on the edge of your new bed, the chief Vestal comes to your room. She sits beside you. She does not offer you childish comforts or tell you that everything will be all right. She is here to begin your education. And she begins with the first, the most important, and the most terrible lesson of all. She begins by explaining the true meaning of your vow. The chief Vestal, the Virgo Vestalis Maxima, sits beside you in your new, grand, and lonely room. Her face is kind, etched with the fine lines of her great age, but her eyes are deeply serious. She has come to give you your first, and most important, lesson. She tells you that you have been granted the greatest honor a Roman woman can receive. But that honor, she explains, comes with a single, absolute, and completely unbreakable rule. She begins to explain the vow. For the next 30 years of your life, from this moment until you are a mature woman of 36, you must remain casta. You must remain a virgin. This, she explains, is not a matter of your own personal, moral choice. It is a sacred, state-level, religious necessity. The goddess Vesta, whose temple you will serve, is the virgin goddess of the hearth, the home, and the family. The eternal, sacred flame that burns in her temple is the very hearth fire of Rome itself, a living symbol of the city's purity, its continuity, and its divine protection. Your physical purity, as her priestess, is now mystically and inextricably linked to the purity and the safety of the entire Roman state. It is a heavy, almost incomprehensible, burden for a 6-year-old child to understand. The safety of the Roman Empire, a vast and powerful entity you cannot even imagine, is now tied directly to your own personal conduct. It's a lot of pressure to put on a child who is probably still mostly worried about whether there will be honey cakes for breakfast. Your 30-year term of service, she explains, will be divided into 3 decades. For the first 10 years, you will be a novice, a student, learning the complex and ancient rites. For the next 10 years, you will be an active priestess, performing those rites. And for your final 10 years, you will be a teacher, a mistress of the tradition, passing your knowledge on to the new novices who will come after you. And through all of it, the vow must hold. Then, her voice low and solemn, she explains what happens if the vow is broken. If a Vestal were to be unchaste, the crime was called incestum. It was considered one of the most terrible of all religious pollutions. It was believed that this act would break the sacred bond between Rome and the goddess, and that it would bring the terrible, vengeful anger of the gods down upon the city in the form of plague, famine, or a catastrophic military defeat. And for such a terrible crime, there was a terrible and unique punishment. Because your body, as a Vestal, is sacred to the goddess, it was a sacrilege for any man to spill your blood. Therefore, you could not be executed in any normal way. A special punishment was devised. The guilty Vestal, she explains, would be dressed in the clothes of a corpse, placed on a funeral litter, and carried in a silent procession through the city to a place just outside the walls called the Campus Celeratus, the evil field. There, a small, underground chamber would have been built. The Vestal would be given a single lamp, a loaf of bread, a flask of water, and a simple couch. She would then be lowered into this chamber, and the entrance would be sealed with earth, and she would be left alone, in the darkness. To die.it is a punishment of almost unimaginable cruelty, a masterpiece of legalistic and religious horror. Your blood is not spilled, so no sacrilege is committed. But you are condemned to a slow, lonely death in the darkness, a horrifying echo of the sacred flame you have failed to protect. Historians debate how often this terrible punishment was actually carried out over the 1,000-year history of the Vestal cult. The historical records mention only about a dozen cases. Was it an extremely rare event, reserved for moments of great national crisis when a powerful, symbolic scapegoat was needed to appease the angry gods? Or did the sheer, unadulterated terror of the punishment mean that the vow was almost never, ever broken? You are 6 years old. You do not fully understand all of these words. But you understand the tone. You understand the absolute, cold seriousness in the old woman's eyes. You are filled with a new and profound sense of awe and of fear. This is your orientation on the first day of your new job. Your boss has just explained that the primary rule is one you must follow for 30 years, and if you break it, the punishment is being buried alive. There is no employee handbook with a gentler way of putting it. The message is very, very clear. The Chief Vestal finishes her solemn lesson. She tells you not to be afraid. She tells you that your life will be one of great honor, and that your first decade of service will be spent learning all the many sacred rituals and duties that will keep you safe, and your vow pure. Your formal education as a Vestal is about to begin. And the first thing you must learn is the great, sacred map of the Roman year. The terrifying lesson of your great vow is over. The next morning, your formal education as a Vestal novice begins. You are led by one of the senior Vestals, a patient, older woman named Octavia, not to the temple itself, but to a quiet, sunlit room in the atrium vesti that serves as a library and a schoolroom. Your first and most fundamental task, she explains, is to learn the calendar. In your old life, the calendar was a simple thing, a way to mark the seasons for planting and harvesting. Here, you learn that the Roman religious calendar, the fasti, is something else entirely. It is not just a way to measure time. It is the sacred operational timetable of the entire Roman state, a complex and intricate machine that dictates every aspect of public life. Your first lessons are a massive feat of memorization. You are only 6 years old, and you must begin to learn the names of the months, the sequence of the hundreds of public festivals and holy days, the specific gods and goddesses who are to be honored on each day, and the unlucky days when no official business can be conducted. The Vestal virgins, you learn, play a central and absolutely essential role in several of the most important of these festivals. There is the Vestalia, in June, the great festival for your own goddess, Vesta. There is the strange, ancient purification ritual of the Lupercalia in February. And there is the Forticidia in April, a fertility festival. Your correct performance of the rituals on these days is not just a matter of tradition. It is considered essential for maintaining the Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods, the divine favor upon which the safety and prosperity of the entire Roman Empire depends. So your first years of school are dedicated to memorizing a very, very long and complicated social and religious calendar. You have to know which god gets which sacrifice on which day, and what kind of ritual cake they prefer. It's like being a personal assistant for the entire pantheon of Roman deities. As part of these lessons, you are taught to read and to write. You sit at a small desk with a wax tablet, and with a pointed stylus, you practice forming your letters, copying out the names of the gods and the festivals. One of the most important things you must learn is the distinction between a fastus day and a nefastus day. On a dies fastus, a lawful day, public business could be conducted. The law courts could be in session, the Senate could meet. But on a dies nefastus, a forbidden day, all such public activities were suspended. It was a day belonging entirely to the gods. Knowing the difference was a vital piece of civic and religious knowledge. It's the ultimate system of religiously mandated procrastination. I'm sorry, Senator, we can't pass that new tax law today. It's a dies nefastus. We'll have to postpone the debate until Thursday. Historians still debate the full extent of the Vestal's formal education. Were they simply taught to memorize and perform these complex rituals by rote, like actors learning their lines? Or, given their incredibly high status, their legal independence, and their sacred duty as the guardians of important state documents like treaties and wills, were they in fact among the most highly educated and literate women in the entire Roman world? You spend your days with Octavia, chanting the long lists of festivals. Lupercalia, Forticidia, Vestalia, Saturnalia. It is difficult work for a small child, but your teacher is patient and kind. Slowly, the strange, ancient rhythm of the Roman year begins to seep into your bones. You are learning the very heartbeat of your new life, a heartbeat that is not your own, but one that belongs to the eternal city of Rome itself. It is a slow, steady, and very, very long song. After many months, you have mastered the basics of the calendar. You now know when the great rituals must be performed. Your teacher tells you that the time has now come to learn how they are performed. Your first practical lesson will be in the preparation of the most basic and most essential of all the sacred substances you will ever have to handle. Tomorrow, you will learn to make the holy water and the sacred salted flour. Your education now moves from the theoretical to the practical. You have learned the when of the great religious calendar. Now, you must learn the how of the daily rituals. Your teacher, the senior Vestal Octavia, leads you not to the library, but to a special, scrupulously clean chamber within the atrium vesti. This is where the sacred substances, the very building blocks of Roman ritual, are prepared. Your first lesson is in the gathering of the holy water. Octavia explains that the water used for the temple's purification rites cannot be just any water. It cannot come from the city's magnificent aqueducts, as that water has flowed through lead pipes and been touched by the profane hands of men. It must be living water, drawn directly from a sacred, natural spring. And so, you learn the daily ritual of walking to a nearby sacred spring, that of the water nymph Egeria. But you cannot carry the water in an ordinary jug. You must use a special, ritual vessel called a feudal. It is a beautifully shaped clay jug, but it has a very strange design. It has a wide mouth, but its base is pointed, like a spinning top. This means that it cannot be set down on the ground. If you try to set it down, it will immediately tip over and spill its contents. This is a clever and very Roman piece of design. It is a physical guarantee that the sacred water, once drawn, will never touch the profane earth, and will be brought back to the temple and used immediately for its holy purpose. Your next, and even more important, daily lesson is in the preparation of the mola salsa. This salted flour was one of the most fundamental and essential substances in all of Roman state religion. You are led to a special, ancient set of millstones kept within the house of the Vestals. Octavia shows you the grain that must be used. It is spelt, an ancient form of wheat, and it must be from the very first ears of grain to be harvested in the season. Your job, as a novice, is to perform the slow, rhythmic, and meditative task of grinding this grain into a coarse flour. Then, this flour is mixed with salt that has also been ritually purified. This simple, dry mixture of salted flour, the mola salsa, would then be sprinkled on the head of every single animal that was to be sacrificed in a state religious ceremony. It was the final, sanctifying act that prepared the animal to be an offering to the gods. So, one of your most important jobs as a sacred priestess of the great Roman state is, essentially, baking. Or at least, the preparation of a very specific, very holy, and completely unleavened baking ingredient. It is a surprisingly domestic and humble duty for such a powerful and revered figure. The ritual had a deep symbolic meaning. The simple cake of spelt and salt was a connection to the earliest, most rustic days of Rome, a time when the city's people were simple farmers. It was a way of keeping the vast, powerful, and cosmopolitan empire grounded in the humble, agricultural traditions of its own past. Historians of Roman religion still debate the full origins of the mola salsa ritual. Was it a simple holdover from a primitive, agricultural magic, a way of blessing the first fruits of the harvest? Or did it have a more complex symbolic meaning, perhaps representing the taming of the wild sacrificial animal, marking it as a part of the human, civilized world before it was offered to the gods? You learn these daily tasks. The journey to the spring, your small arms struggling to carry the heavy, awkward feudal that you are not allowed to set down. The long, repetitive, and strangely peaceful work of turning the heavy millstone, the rhythmic, scraping sound echoing in the quiet room. These are your new chores. And they are heavy ones. Literally. The water jug is heavy and designed to be spilled. The grinding stone is heavy. And the weight of knowing that this is not just flour, but a sacred substance essential for the spiritual health of the entire empire, is the heaviest of all. After many weeks of this practice, Octavia decides that you have mastered these basic, preparatory rituals. You now know how to create the sacred substances. You are now ready for the next, and most important, step in your long education. You are ready to be formally introduced to the goddess herself, and to the eternal, living fire that is her sacred presence on earth. Your education now moves from the practical preparations in the atrium vesti to the sacred heart of your new world. You have learned the when of the calendar and the how of the ritual substances. Now your teacher, the senior Vestal Octavia, tells you that it is time for you to be formally introduced to the goddess herself. She leads you out of the quiet courtyard of your home, across a small, sacred path, and to the entrance of the building that is the very center of the Roman state religion. You are standing before the temple of Vesta. It is not a grand, colossal temple like the one dedicated to Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. It is a small, intimate, and beautiful circular building, its round shape a deliberate and ancient echo of the primitive, round huts of the very first Romans. It is a symbol of the home, the hearth, of the family. And this, Octavia explains, is the hearth of the one, great, eternal family, the family of Rome itself. You step inside. The air is warm and smells of olive oil and ancient, sacred smoke. The space is round, and in the very center, on a raised, circular hearth, it is burning. The eternal flame, this is Vesta. Uniquely among the great gods of Rome, she has no cult statue in her temple. Her divine presence is not represented by a cold, marble image. Her presence is the living, breathing, and eternal fire itself. You are now in the presence of the goddess. You are filled with a sense of profound, and slightly fearful, awe, This is your first lesson by the flame. Octavia begins to teach you the practical and sacred art of tending to the goddess. The fire, she explains, must be fed only with richly pure fuel, likely the finest olive oil from a sacred grove. The hearth, and the entire temple, must be kept scrupulously and perfectly clean at all times, as any impurity or dirt would be a grave insult to the goddess of the pure hearth. And then she tells you the most important rule of all. The rule upon which your entire life, and the life of Rome itself, depends. The flame must never, ever be allowed to go out. It must be watched, day and night, in a constant, unbroken vigil for all time. As long as the flame of Vesta burns, Rome will be safe, eternal, and victorious. If the flame were to ever be extinguished, it would be the single worst omen the city could possibly receive, a sign that the goddess had withdrawn her protection, and that a terrible catastrophe was about to befall the Roman people. It is a simple, but awesome, responsibility. Your job is not to lead grand processions or to perform great, public sacrifices. Your job is to perform a quiet, domestic, and never-ending household chore for the entire Roman state. You are one of the 6 sacred housekeepers of Rome. Once a year, on June 15th, the temple was ritually cleaned. The old ashes and any debris from the hearth were carefully and ceremonially collected. They were then carried in a solemn procession and thrown into the river Tiber from a specific, sacred bridge. It was a symbolic, annual spring cleaning for the city's own heart. Even the goddess of the eternal flame, it seems, required a bit of dusting from time to time. Historians of religion debate the deep origins of Vesta's cult. Is she a purely Roman goddess, born from the ancient Italic traditions of the sacred hearth fire that was the center of every home? Or is her cult related to the similar Greek goddess, Hestia, or to even older, Indo-European fire deities whose memory is now lost to time? Her profound simplicity, her lack of a complex mythology, her focus on the pure, abstract symbol of the flame, suggests she is an incredibly ancient and fundamental deity. You are 6 years old, and you have just been introduced to the most important thing in the world. It is not a person. It is not a statue. It is a small, flickering, and eternal fire. And for the next 30 years of your life, it will be your single, greatest, and most terrifying responsibility not to let it go out. No pressure. You have now seen the sacred heart of your duty. You have been in the presence of the goddess. Now you will begin to learn about the strange, paradoxical life you must lead as one of her chosen guardians, a life of deep, monastic seclusion, but also of immense and very public privilege. You have been formally introduced to the goddess in her temple. You now understand the profound and terrifying weight of your central duty. You return with your teacher, Octavia, to the quiet, sunlit courtyards of the Atrium Vesti, your new home. And you begin to learn about the strange, contradictory life you will lead as one of the flame's sacred guardians. It is a life of deep seclusion, but also of immense and unparalleled public privilege. Your home, the house of the Vestals, is a magnificent palace, funded entirely by the Roman state. You have your own spacious and beautifully appointed set of rooms, complete with mosaic floors and painted walls. You are attended by a staff of public slaves who take care of all the mundane, daily chores of cooking, cleaning, and maintenance. While the Christian monks we have met in other stories took a vow of poverty, your life is to be one of visible prestige and material comfort, a lifestyle that reflects the immense honor of your position. And with this status comes a legal freedom that is unknown to any other woman in Rome. As a Vestal, you are considered sacrosanct. To physically harm you is a crime punishable by death. You are not subject to the legal authority of any man, not your father, and not even the Pontifex Maximus himself. You are sui juris, a legal person in your own right. You can own property, inherit a fortune, and write your own will. It is a life of strange and powerful contradictions. You are a virtual prisoner within these beautiful walls, your every action governed by a rigid and ancient set of religious rules. Yet, in the world outside these walls, you are one of the most legally powerful and independent women in the entire empire. You have traded the personal freedom of a normal life for a different, and in some ways much greater, public freedom. Your days as a novice are filled with a quiet and disciplined routine. Your mornings are spent in the schoolroom, memorizing the endless details of the sacred calendar, practicing your reading and writing on wax tablets, and learning the thousands of lines of the ancient prayers and chants that are part of the Vestal liturgy. When you do have to travel through the city, perhaps to the sacred spring to fetch the holy water, you do not walk as a common person. You are transported in a special, covered litter, a soft, curtained carriage carried on the shoulders of servants. And you are granted a privilege that even the great consuls and senators do not always have, the right of way. A special attendant, a lictor, walks before your litter, clearing a path for you through the crowded streets. Everyone must make way for a Vestal Virgin. It is the ancient Roman equivalent of having a VIP motorcade with a police escort. It's a nice perk of the job. Historians debate the true nature of the Vestal seclusion. Was the Atrium Vesti a truly cloistered, convent-like environment, a place completely cut off from the political and social intrigues of the city? Or was it, in fact, a powerful and influential salon for the female relatives of the city's most powerful men? A unique, women-only space where the elite mothers, wives, and sisters of senators and generals could meet, network, and perhaps exert their own, quiet, and indirect influence on the affairs of the state. The one thing that is certain is that your new life is to be lived in the company of only 5 other women. For the next 30 years, these other priestesses will be your only family. You are now a part of the most exclusive and sacred sorority in all of Rome. There are only ever 6 members. The bond between you and your sister priestesses, you will learn, is an incredibly deep and complex one, a mixture of shared sacred duty, of friendship, of professional rivalry, and of absolute mutual dependence. Your life is a quiet, internal, and almost entirely domestic one. But your position also requires you to be a public symbol of the state's piety and purity at the city's greatest spectacles. You learn from the older priestesses that soon there will be great games held at the Colosseum, and that it will be your duty to attend. Your life is one of quiet, cloistered routine, but your sacred status also demands your presence at Rome's greatest public spectacles. When the great games are held, you and your sister priestesses are escorted to the Colosseum. You travel through the city in your curtained litter, shielded from the common gaze. But once inside the massive, roaring amphitheater, your presence is a very public and very important one. A sacred presence. The Colosseum is a place of overwhelming noise, of dust, of the smell of sweat and blood. It is the chaotic, violent heart of the Roman world. And yet, in the midst of this spectacle, a place of supreme honor is reserved for you. The Vestal Virgins have their own special box, a place of honor located on the main podium, often directly opposite the Emperor's own box. Your presence is not for entertainment. It's a sacred duty. You are there as the religious representatives of the Roman state, and your pure and holy presence is believed to sanctify the games and ensure the favor of the gods. The power to pardon your sacred status grants you a unique and remarkable power, a power greater than that of almost any magistrate. It is the power over life and death. If a condemned criminal, being led to their execution, were to accidentally cross the path of a Vestal virgin in the street, they were automatically and immediately pardoned. The only condition was that the Vestal had to swear an oath that the meeting was purely by chance and not prearranged. This incredible power demonstrates the immense reverence and legal authority the Vestals held. Their very presence was a divine interruption of the state's law, a walking, living symbol of mercy. A world of contradictions. You sit in your place of honor and watch the brutal spectacle unfold on the sand below. The contrast is a profound one. You, a symbol of purity, peace, and the life-giving hearth, are a required witness to the most violent and deadly rituals of Roman life. Historians debate the meaning of the Vestal's presence at these bloody games. Was it a way of legitimizing the violence, giving a religious stamp of approval to the gladiatorial combat? Or was it simply a reflection of their unique status as women who were outside the normal rules of society, and therefore permitted to witness events that were often considered too coarse for other noble women? The Colosseum is the loudest and most chaotic place in Rome. And you, the quietest and most secluded of all its inhabitants, have the best seats in the house. It's another of the strange paradoxes of your new life. When the games are over, you are escorted back through the city to the profound, welcoming silence of the Atrium Vesti. Your first decade of learning is drawing to a close. You are no longer a frightened child. You are ready to become a full priestess and to take on your most important and loneliest duty. Your first decade as a Vestal, your time as a novice, is now complete. The 10 years of learning, of memorizing the sacred calendar, of practicing the rituals of the molla salsa and the holy water, are over. You are no longer a child. You are a young woman of 16, and you are now initiated as a full priestess. And with this new and honored status comes your most important, most sacred, and most demanding duty. You must now take your turn in the lonely vigil of the night watch. The central purpose of your entire existence, the reason for your 30-year vow and your life of seclusion, is to ensure that the sacred flame of Vesta, the symbolic and spiritual heart of the Roman state, never, ever goes out. To this end, the 6 Vestals share the duty of a constant, unbroken, 24-hour vigil. The daytime watches are easier, filled with the distant, muffled sounds of the bustling forum outside and the company of your sister priestesses in the Atrium Vesti nearby. But the night watch is a different world. It is a time of profound silence, of deep darkness, and of immense, solitary responsibility. Imagine you are in the small, circular temple of Vesta. The great city of Rome outside is, for once, almost completely silent. The only light in your entire world comes from the single, eternal flame, dancing gently on the central hearth. Your one and only job, for the next several hours, is to keep that flame alive until the sun rises. The pressure of this simple task is immense. If the flame were to be extinguished, it was considered a terrifying omen, a sign that the goddess Vesta had withdrawn her protection from Rome. It would be seen as a precursor to a great national catastrophe, a military defeat, a famine, a terrible plague. The entire city would be plunged into a state of religious panic. And the Vestal who was on duty at the time the flame went out, the one who had failed in her sacred task, was held personally and solely responsible. The punishment for this failure was severe. You would not be executed, but you would be taken by the Pontifex Maximus into a dark, sealed room, stripped of your sacred robes, and scourged, a form of ritual whipping. It was a punishment of both physical pain and profound, public shame. So, your one job is to keep a fire going. It sounds simple. But the consequences of failure are a national crisis and a deeply humiliating personal punishment. There is absolutely no room for error. You are not allowed to doze off. You are not allowed to become distracted. You are the guardian of the city's soul, and the city's soul is a small, flickering fire. It is probably the most stressful night shift job in the entire Roman Empire. The hours of the vigil are long, quiet, and meditative. You spend the time in a series of slow, ancient rituals. You keep the temple spotlessly clean, sweeping the marble floor with a special, richly pure broom. You feed the sacred flame, not with common wood, but with the finest, purest olive oil, or perhaps with the wood from a sacred, fruit-bearing tree. And you recite, in a low, quiet voice, the ancient prayers and chants that have been spoken in this very room for nearly 1,000 years. A fascinating part of the Vestal tradition concerned the relighting of the flame, should it ever be extinguished. It could not be relit with a torch from another, profane fire. It had to be reborn in a pure, primitive way. The Pontifex Maximus would be summoned, and the new fire would be created either by the ancient method of rubbing two sticks together to create a friction fire, or, more likely, by using a special, concave bronze mirror to focus the rays of the sun onto a piece of tinder. This difficult, highly symbolic relighting was a major religious event, a way of showing that the sacred fire had been born again, not from man, but from nature or the heavens themselves. Historians debate the psychological toll that this constant, high-stakes duty had on the priestesses. Was it a source of deep spiritual fulfillment, a time of profound, personal connection with the goddess? Or was it a source of constant, lonely anxiety, the weight of the entire empire's safety resting squarely on your ability to not get distracted or fall asleep, to pass the long hours of the night, and to impress upon the younger priestesses like yourself the profound importance of their task? The senior Vestals would often tell cautionary tales. Stories of the rare and terrible times in Rome's long history when the flame did go out, and the terrible omens and disasters that followed. It is a very effective, if slightly terrifying, teaching method. Nothing keeps you more focused on your work than a scary story about the terrible things that happened the last time someone messed it up. You sit on a simple stool, watching the gentle, dancing flame. The only sound is the soft, almost silent hiss of the fire and the distant cry of a night watchman in the forum. The fate of an empire is in your hands, and all you have to do is stay awake. The night in the Temple of Vesta is long, and it is profoundly quiet. The only sound is the soft, almost silent hiss of the eternal flame. The only light is its gentle, flickering glow, which casts dancing shadows on the curved marble walls. You sit on a simple wooden stool, your eyes fixed on the fire, your mind focused on your single, awesome duty. To pass the long hours, and to impress upon you, a new priestess, the immense and terrible gravity of your task. The senior Vestal who shares your watch, Octavia, begins to tell you a cautionary tale. It is one of the most famous stories in the long and ancient history of your order. It is the story of the Vestal Emilia. Many, many years ago, she begins, her voice a low whisper in the quiet of the temple. Emilia was on the night watch, just as you are now. She was a good and virtuous priestess, but for a single, fateful moment, her attention wavered. Perhaps she was lost in a sad memory, or perhaps she became engaged in a quiet, whispered conversation with a novice who was assisting her. And in that moment of distraction, the unthinkable happened. The sacred flame, unfed and untended, flickered, dwindled, and died. A cold, terrible darkness filled the temple. And a cold, terrible dread filled Emilia's heart. She knew what she had done. She had committed the gravest failure a Vestal could commit. She had allowed the very soul of Rome to be extinguished. The news was a catastrophe for the city. It was seen as a terrible omen, a sign that the goddess Vesta had withdrawn her protection from her people. The Senate was convened in an emergency session. The city was plunged into a state of religious panic and mourning. And Emilia, as the one responsible, had to face the consequences. The Pontifex Maximus prepared to carry out the traditional punishment for this failure. She was to be scourged. The story goes, Octavia continues, that as the priests were preparing for this punishment, Emilia, in a state of absolute desperation, knelt before the cold, dead hearth in the temple. She prayed to the goddess Vesta with all her heart. She professed her unwavering devotion, and she begged the goddess for a sign, a miracle to prove that her soul, if not her actions, was still pure. Then she rose. She took a piece of the sash from her own white linen robe, and she cast it upon the cold, gray ashes of the hearth. And miraculously, a great, brilliant, and pure flame burst forth from the piece of cloth, and the sacred fire was instantly and divinely rekindled. The goddess herself had intervened, a direct testament to Emilia's inner piety. She was saved. The moral of the story, Octavia explains, is a double-edged one. It is a terrifying reminder that a single, momentary lapse in concentration can lead to a national catastrophe and a terrible personal punishment. But it is also a comforting reassurance that the goddess Vesta is a kind and forgiving mistress, one who knows the hearts of her priestesses and will protect those whose devotion is true. It is a story designed to instill both absolute fear and absolute faith. Octavia also reminds you that the flame is not the only sacred thing you and your sisters guard. Deep within the temple's inner sanctum, the Pinus Vesti, a place so holy that only you and the Pontifex Maximus may ever enter, are other secret, ancient objects. These are the Pignora Imperii, the pledges of empire, sacred talismans upon which the very survival of Rome is believed to depend. The most famous of these is the Palladium, a small, ancient wooden statue of the goddess Pallas Athena, which the hero Aeneas was said to have rescued from the burning ruins of Troy and brought to Italy. So your job description includes professional fire watcher and guardian of the city's most secret and powerful magical artifacts. The responsibilities seem to be piling up. Historians debate the function of these miracle stories in the Roman state religion. Were they genuine religious tales, passed down to inspire faith? Or were they a form of sophisticated priestly propaganda, carefully constructed narratives designed to enhance the mystique and the sacred authority of the Vestal order, showing the Roman people that these priestesses were under the direct and miraculous protection of the gods? The story is finished. The long night watch continues. You sit in the deep quiet, your eyes fixed on the Rio flame, dancing gently on its hearth. You feel the immense weight of the 1,000 years of history that have taken place in this very room. Finally, you see the first, pale, gray light of dawn begin to filter into the temple. Your first lonely vigil is over. You have kept the flame alive. Your duty shifts. And as you will soon learn, your responsibilities are not just confined to this sacred space. They extend out into the civic and public life of Rome itself. Your duties as a Vestal, you are learning, are not just confined to the sacred, internal world of the temple and its flame. Your sacred status makes you and your 5 sisters the most trusted people in the entire city, and this trust comes with a unique, quiet, and heavy responsibility. You are not just priestesses. You are the guardians of Rome's most important secrets. Point one of your most significant civic duties is to act as the official custodian for the last wills and testaments of Rome's most powerful citizens. In a city that is a constant, churning sea of political schemes, family rivalries, and the ever-present threat of betrayal, the Atrium Vesti, the House of the Vestals, is considered the only truly safe and neutral ground. A will deposited with the Vestals was guaranteed to be safe from theft, from being tampered with by a greedy relative, or from being destroyed by a political enemy. It is a remarkable testament to your order's reputation. In a city full of soldiers, magistrates, and high walls, the safest vault in all of Rome was the quiet, sacred house of 6 women. Imagine you are a young priestess, now in the 2nd decade of your service. You are no longer a novice. You are a full Vestal. One afternoon, you witness a scene of quiet gravity. A powerful, elderly senator, a man who commands legions and whose voice can sway the fate of the Republic, arrives at the gates of your home. He is met not by a magistrate or a soldier, but by your superior, the Virgo Vestalis Maxima. You watch from a respectful distance as the great senator, with a gesture of profound reverence, hands over a sealed papyrus scroll. It is his will, containing all his final wishes, the fate of his vast fortune, and perhaps some dangerous political secrets. The chief Vestal takes the scroll and, without a word, disappears into the inner sanctum of the house where these precious documents are kept. In this role, you and your sisters became the keepers of the most sensitive information in the entire empire. You would have known the secret debts of famous generals, the hidden inheritances of great patrician families, and the final political instructions of the most powerful men in the world. The will of the first emperor, Augustus, a massive and hugely important document that effectively laid out the future of the Roman Empire, was entrusted to the Vestals. It was kept safely and secretly within your walls for years until his death, when it was brought out and read to a stunned and anxious Senate. The fate of the entire Roman world, the instructions for who would be the next emperor, was sealed away in a scroll, sitting quietly in a room in your house. It is a level of responsibility that is difficult to comprehend. Historians still debate how much real, practical political influence this unique role gave to the Vestals. Did their secret knowledge of the contents of these wills give them a form of indirect, soft power in the ruthless political world of Rome? Or were they simply passive, neutral guardians, whose sacred oath prevented them from ever acting upon, or even speaking of, the incredible secrets they held? This responsibility elevates your status far beyond that of a simple priestess. You are a sacred notary, a divine banker, and a trusted custodian of the state's most sensitive information. It is a lot of responsibility for a life that is supposed to be one of quiet, cloistered contemplation, and these civic duties, like guarding the wills or performing rites at state ceremonies, would often bring you into formal, public contact with the great men of Rome. As you watch the old senator depart, his face a little more peaceful now that his final affairs are in safe hands, you are reminded of the grand public processions and triumphs that you, in your place of honor, are also required to witness. Your duties as a Vestal, you have learned, are not all confined to the quiet, hidden world of the temple and the Atrium Vesti. You are a public figure, a living symbol of Rome's piety and the purity of the state. And as such, your presence is required at the city's most important public spectacles. Today, you are seated with your 5 sister priestesses in your place of honor to witness a Roman triumph. It is the greatest and most glorious ceremony in Roman life, a magnificent, city-wide parade granted only to a military general who has won a truly decisive victory against a foreign enemy. The city of Rome is a roaring sea of people, The crowds pack 10 deep along the Sacra Via, the sacred way, through the Forum. The air is thick with the scent of thrown flowers, of street food, and of the heavy, sweet smell of incense burning on dozens of temporary altars. From your special, reserved viewing box, a place of immense prestige, often near the Emperor's own, you watch the magnificent procession unfold. First come the senators and the magistrates in their finest white togas. They are followed by trumpeters, their long, straight trumpets blaring a triumphant, brassy fanfare. Then come the spoils of war, great, heavy wagons piled high with the captured treasures of a conquered kingdom, golden statues, silver plates, magnificent works of art. There are exotic animals, strange beasts that the people of Rome have never seen before. And then there is the sad, shuffling column of the captured enemy themselves, the defeated king and his family, paraded in chains, a living testament to the absolute power of Rome. Finally, at the very heart of the procession, comes the hero of the day. The triumphant general rides in a magnificent, four-horsed golden chariot. He is dressed not as a general, but as a god. He wears a purple toga, embroidered with gold, and his face is painted a bright, ceremonial red with vermilion, to make him resemble the sacred, ancient statue of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the greatest of all the gods. For this one glorious day, he is almost a god himself. But a famous and ancient tradition provides a quiet note of caution. Standing in the chariot directly behind the triumphant hero is a public slave. It is this slave's duty to hold a golden laurel wreath over the general's head, and to continuously whisper in his ear a simple, humbling phrase: Memento mori. Remember, you are mortal. As the general's golden chariot passes directly in front of the stand where you and your sisters are seated, he turns his head. His eyes, in his red-painted face, scan the crowd, and for a single, breathtaking, and electric moment, his gaze meets yours. He is a handsome, heroic figure, the most powerful and celebrated man in Rome, at the absolute peak of his glory. You are a secluded priestess, a symbol of purity, a woman he is forbidden by law and by religion to even think of in a worldly way. It is a moment that lasts no longer than a heartbeat, but it feels like an eternity. In a life of profound seclusion and deep, emotional discipline, this one, simple, shared glance with a man from the outside world is a deeply shocking and thrilling event. It is a small, warm crack in the perfect, cool, white marble of your sacred life. You quickly, and with a sense of shame, lower your eyes, your heart pounding beneath your simple white robes. Historians debate the true emotional and psychological lives of the Vestals. Were they, as their 30-year vow of chastity demanded, completely detached from the romantic and worldly passions of the city they served? Or were they, as Roman poetry and stories often hint, women who experienced the same desires, the same longings, as anyone else, but under the constant, terrible pressure of their sacred duty and its horrific punishment? The procession moves on. The moment is over. But it has changed something inside you. The image of the hero's face, the intensity of his gaze, is now a permanent fixture in your mind. The great triumph will eventually end. The city will go back to its normal, daily business. But for you, a quiet, internal, and deeply dangerous drama has just begun. The world, in the form of a single, human glance, has intruded upon your sacred silence. And you know, with a mixture of excitement and a deep, cold dread, that a man as bold and as powerful as the triumphant general will not let such a moment pass without some kind of response. The great triumphal procession is over, but the memory of that one, single, shared glance with the heroic general has not faded. You spend the next few days in a state of quiet, nervous turmoil. You perform your sacred duties in the temple, your hands steady, your face a mask of serene composure. But your mind is in a state of quiet chaos. Did you imagine it? Did it mean anything? A few days later, your question is answered. An attendant from the atrium Vestal, a woman you trust, comes to you. She quietly and discreetly hands you a small, tightly folded papyrus scroll, tied with a simple, unadorned ribbon. It is not an official document. It is a personal message. Your heart begins to pound so loudly you are sure the other priestesses can hear it. You take the scroll to the quiet privacy of your own elegant chambers. With hands that are not entirely steady, you untie the ribbon and unroll the papyrus. Inside, written in the strong, elegant, and clearly educated handwriting of a Roman nobleman, is a poem. It is a beautiful Latin elegy, written in the passionate and romantic style of the great poets like Ovid and Propertius. The poem does not speak of a crude or vulgar desire. It is a work of art. It praises your sacred purity, comparing your grace and your quiet dignity to that of the goddess Diana, the chaste huntress of the moon. But woven throughout the respectful and reverent verses is a clear and unmistakable undercurrent of very human, and very forbidden, admiration and longing. It is signed simply, with the name of the triumphant general. This small scroll is now the most dangerous object you have ever held. It is not a love letter. In the eyes of Roman law and religion, it is evidence of a potential sacrilege. To be found with it, to keep it, and most of all, to reply to it, would be to take the first, irrevocable step on a path that could lead to your absolute ruin. It is a beautiful, thrilling, and absolutely terrifying thing to possess. This is the central, dramatic conflict of your life as a Vestal. The quiet, sacred, and predictable duty you have been trained for since you were a 6-year-old child versus the sudden, powerful, and unpredictable pull of a very human, very worldly emotion. He has not just sent you a note. He has sent you a work of art, a challenge to your mind and your spirit as much as to your heart. He is treating you not as a remote, untouchable symbol, but as an equal, a woman whose education and refinement would allow her to understand and appreciate the subtle allusions and the elegant meter of his verse. Historians debate how literate Roman women were. While basic literacy was common among the upper classes, the ability to compose and appreciate elegant poetry was a sign of a very high-level education. A Vestal virgin, who was required to read and memorize complex ancient rites and sacred texts, was almost certainly among the most literate and well-educated women in all of Rome, making her a worthy intellectual and poetic partner for an educated general. You are faced with a terrible and silent choice. Your vow to Vesta is absolute. Your duty is to the flame, and to the city. But the poem in your hand is a glimpse of another life, a life of passion, of romance, of a personal connection to another human being, a life that you have been forever denied. What can you do? You cannot reply. That would be an act of encouragement, a crime in itself. You cannot report him to the Pontifex Maximus. That would cause a political scandal that could shake the very foundations of the city. And you cannot keep the poem. It is a piece of evidence too dangerous to possess. With a heart that feels as if it is breaking, you make the only choice a Vestal can make. You take the beautiful, heartfelt poem, and you hold it to the small, pure, steady flame of one of the oil lamps in your room. You watch as the elegant, handwritten words of the city's greatest hero curl, turn black, and dissolve into fragile, weightless ash. It is an act of immense and painful self-discipline. It is a silent, sorrowful reaffirmation of your vow. You have chosen the goddess over the man. You have chosen your duty over your desire. But the memory of his words, and the ghost of the man who wrote them, will not be so easy to burn away. And the act of destroying the forbidden message makes you think, with a new and very personal terror, of the ultimate consequence of being discovered. The memory of the chief Vestal's first solemn lesson, about the terrible punishment for a broken vow, comes flooding back into your mind. The ashes of the general's poem are a cold, gray dust in the bottom of your oil lamp. The immediate, tangible danger is gone, but a new, more profound and internal fear has taken its place. The memory of the chief Vestal's first solemn lesson, the story she told you on your very first night in this house, comes flooding back into your mind with a chilling and now very personal clarity. It is the whisper of the live tomb. You remember her quiet, serious voice explaining the crime of incestum. A Vestal who broke her 30-year vow of chastity was not just a personal sinner, she was a traitor to the very soul of Rome. Her act was believed to pollute the sacred rites of the state, to sever the bond between the city and the goddess Vesta, and to invite a terrible divine wrath, plague, famine, or military defeat down upon the entire Roman people. And for this most terrible of all religious crimes, there was a unique and terrible punishment, because your body, as a Vestal, was sacred and inviolable. It was a sacrilege for any Roman to spill your blood. Therefore, you could not be executed by the sword or any other common means. So the ancient Roman religious law, in its cold, brilliant, and legalistic cruelty, had devised a way to execute you without technically executing you at all. You remember the chief Vestal's description of the ritual. The condemned Vestal would be dressed in the clothes of a corpse. She would be placed in a closed, silent litter and carried through the streets of Rome. The city would fall silent as the sad procession passed, as if for a real funeral. The procession would end just outside the city walls, at a place known as the Campus Celeratus, the evil field. Here, a small, underground chamber would have been dug, a tiny, man-made tomb. Inside this tomb, the priests would place a simple couch, a single oil lamp, a loaf of bread, and a flask of water. This was a final, symbolic gesture, a way for the state to absolve itself of the direct guilt of starving you to death. Then, the condemned Vestal would be lowered down into the chamber. The entrance would be covered, sealed with earth, and you would be left alone in the absolute darkness, to be forgotten by the world above. It is a punishment that is as symbolic as it is cruel. The guardian of the eternal, living flame is condemned to a slow death in a cold, eternal darkness. It is a perfect, terrible, and poetic inversion of your life's sacred duty. The man who was your lover, the cause of your downfall, would face a more direct, but equally brutal, fate. He would be taken to the forum, tied to a stake, and publicly scourged to death by the priests. For the woman, a secret, silent, underground death. For the man, a public, violent, and humiliating one. Historians still debate how often this horrific punishment was actually carried out over the 1,000-year history of the Vestal cult. The historical records are sparse, mentioning only about a dozen confirmed cases. Was it an extremely rare event, a terrible threat reserved for moments of great national crisis when a powerful, symbolic scapegoat was needed to appease public fear and a perceived anger from the gods? Or was the sheer, unadulterated terror of the punishment so effective that the vow was almost never, ever broken, lying in your quiet, luxurious room in the Atrium Vesti, the memory of the general's poem still a fresh wound in your mind? This is no longer an abstract historical question. It is a real and terrifying possibility. The brief, human connection you felt during the triumph, the thrill of receiving his secret message, now seems laced with the cold, damp air of the tomb. This is the true weight of the vow you have taken. It is not just a promise to be good. It is a promise you must keep, on pain of a death so terrible it is almost unimaginable. It is a powerful motivator for staying focused on your work. Your fear, in a strange way, cleanses you. It renews your sense of purpose. You have faced your first great, internal test, and you have chosen your duty. The years will continue to pass peacefully. Your life will settle back into its quiet, sacred rhythm. And you will move into the final decade of your service, your role changing one last time. The years pass in the quiet, predictable, and sacred rhythm of the Atrium Vesti. The memory of the general's poem and the brief, silent crisis of your heart has faded into a distant, cautionary tale in your own mind, a secret you have told to no one. You have served your 10 years as a novice, learning the endless rites of your office. You have served your 10 years as an active priestess, performing those rites, your nights often spent in the lonely, solemn vigil of the sacred flame. You are now a woman in your late 20s, and you are entering the third and final decade of your service. Your role is about to change one last time. You are no longer primarily a student or a servant of the flame. You are now a teacher. You are a mistress of the sacred arts, a living repository of the ancient traditions of Vesta. Your most important duty now is to pass on this immense and complex body of knowledge to the new, young novices who are chosen to join the order. The structure of your 30-year term was a masterpiece of institutional memory, designed to ensure the perfect and unbroken transmission of the complex and often unwritten rituals from one generation to the next. One day, you are there to greet a new novice. A small, 6-year-old girl, her eyes wide with fear and confusion, is led into the Atrium Vesti by the Pontifex Maximus. And as you look at her, you see a perfect, heartbreaking reflection of yourself 20 years ago. But you are no longer the frightened child. You are now the calm, wise, and authoritative senior Vestal. You are the new Octavia. It is your sacred duty to be this little girl's guide, to teach her the calendar, the rituals of the water and the flower, and in time, the terrible and solemn lesson of the great vow. It is a profound and poignant moment. The circle is complete. You have become the living memory of your order. As a senior Vestal, you are a figure of immense respect and authority, not just within the walls of your own home, but in the wider world of Roman society. You are consulted by priests and senators on matters of religious law and ancient tradition. You now preside over some of the more public-facing rituals that the Vestals are responsible for, such as the preparation of the special bread made from the first ears of the harvest, which is used in some of the most important state ceremonies. The young senators who were just boys playing in the forum when you first entered service are now powerful men, and they look to you with a deep and genuine reverence. In a city of constant political change, of shifting alliances and sudden betrayals, you are a constant, unchanging symbol of Rome's most ancient and sacred traditions. Historians debate the true nature of the Vestal's power during these later years of their service. Were they, with their deep knowledge of religious law and their unparalleled reputation for incorruptibility, sometimes influential political advisors? Were their opinions on the omens or the proper observance of a ritual sought by emperors and generals before a great undertaking? Or was their influence a purely spiritual and symbolic one, a source of moral authority rather than direct political power? The young novices now look at you with the same awe that you once had for the senior Vestals. To them, a woman of 28 seems ancient, a figure who has been a part of this sacred place forever. But you are still a relatively young woman, and you are aware that the horizon of your own life is beginning to change. The end of your 30-year term, which for so long seemed like an impossibly, infinitely distant future, is now on the horizon. For the first time in decades, you can begin to allow yourself to think, however quietly and tentatively, about a life outside these sacred walls. In your third decade of service, as you mature from a simple priestess into a mistress of the sacred rites, you begin to understand the true and unique nature of the power you wield. You are not just a teacher, sequestered in a quiet schoolroom. You are one of the most influential women in the entire city of Rome. This power is, first and foremost, a legal and financial one. You are sui juris, a woman under your own legal authority. In a society where every other woman, no matter how wealthy or noble, is legally under the control of a male guardian, first her father, and then her husband, you are completely independent. You can own property in your own name. You can enter into legally binding contracts. You can inherit a fortune, and you can write your own will to bequeath it as you see fit. The state provides you with a generous annual stipend, befitting your sacred status, and many Vestals, over their long careers, became independently wealthy women. It is a life of incredible paradox. You have sworn a vow of chastity, a profound act of personal sacrifice, but in return, the state has granted you the kind of economic and legal freedom that is the stuff of dreams for every other woman in Rome. You have given up the traditional power of a wife and mother, but you have gained the much rarer power of being your own person. Your influence is also social and political. The Atrium Vesti, your home, is not just a convent. It is one of the great social hubs for the elite women of the city. The mothers, wives, and sisters of the most powerful senators and generals in Rome would come here to pay their respects to the goddess, and to speak with you and your sister priestesses. In this quiet, elegant, and exclusively female space, you are privy to the most intimate political gossip, the secret alliances, and the hidden anxieties of the city's ruling class. And on rare, but crucial, occasions, this influence becomes direct. Because the Vestals were seen as sacred, neutral, and utterly incorruptible, they were sometimes called upon to act as mediators in the most dangerous of political disputes. Their sacred status allowed them to move safely between warring factions. A famous story tells of how the Vestals intervened on behalf of a young Julius Caesar, when the dictator Sulla had marked him for death, successfully pleading for his life. Your role is a strange one. You live a life of secluded piety, yet you are, at times, a political negotiator, a safe deposit box for state secrets, and a powerful real estate owner. You are both an outsider to the political world, and yet, in many ways, you are at its very heart. Historians debate the true nature of this influence. Was it a formal, recognized power, with senior Vestals acting as official, if discreet, advisors to the great men of the state? Or was it a more subtle, informal, soft power, exercised through your personal connections and the immense, unassailable moral authority that you commanded? You are now a woman in your late 30s, at the absolute peak of your power and prestige. You are a wealthy, independent, and universally revered figure. And the end of your 30-year term of service, which for so long seemed like an impossibly distant future, is now on the horizon. The young novices look at you with awe. To them, you seem ancient, a permanent and wise fixture of this sacred house. But you know that in just a few short years, you will face the greatest and most difficult choice of your life, the choice of what to do with your newfound freedom. 30 years. It is a lifetime. The young, frightened 6-year-old girl who was led into the Atrium Vesti, her hand trembling in the grip of the high priest, is now a mature, respected, and powerful woman of 36. You have fulfilled your vow. You have learned the sacred rites, you have performed them without error, and you have taught them to the new generation. And today, your sacred duty, the vow that has defined your entire existence, is complete. A solemn and formal ceremony is held, once again presided over by the Pontifex Maximus. You stand before him, not as a child, but as a revered senior priestess at the end of her long service. He recites the ancient formula that releases you from your sacred obligations. Your distinctive, woolen headband, the vita, which has marked your consecrated status for 3 decades, is ritually removed. The vows that have bound you to the goddess Vesta and to the city of Rome are now, officially and legally, dissolved. You are no longer a Vestal virgin. You are a private citizen, a domina. And you are, in this moment, one of the most respected and eligible women in all of Rome. You are now free to marry. And a marriage to a former Vestal, a woman of impeccable noble birth, of proven virtue, and of immense religious prestige, was considered one of the greatest honors a Roman nobleman could hope for. You are also a woman of considerable personal wealth, from the generous state salary you have received for 3 decades, and from any inheritances you may have been given. It is a strange and wonderful new beginning. The world, which had been a distant, abstract thing seen through the windows of a curtained litter or from a special box at the Colosseum, is now, in theory, open to you. The city is no longer just a sacred trust that you must protect from a distance. It is now a place for you to live in, as a private, wealthy, and highly sought-after woman. But this new freedom is a deeply bewildering thing. For 30 years, your every day, your every hour, has been governed by a rigid, predictable, and deeply meaningful sacred routine. Your life has been one of immense discipline, of quiet purpose, and of communal seclusion. Now, all of that is gone. What does freedom mean when the only life you have ever truly known has been a life of sacred duty, lived within these familiar and protective walls? The outside world is no longer your home. It is a foreign country. You would face a unique social challenge. At the age of 36, you would be considered quite old for a first-time bride in a Roman society where girls from noble families were often married in their early teens. You would be entering the world of Roman marriage and family life not as a young, pliable girl, but as a mature, independent, and powerful woman, a very unusual, and perhaps intimidating, position. Imagine the strangeness of a first courtship at the age of 38. You are a woman of immense spiritual authority and legal independence, and you must now learn the art of polite social conversation with a senator who might be trying to arrange a marriage. Historians debate how many Vestals actually chose this path. The historical records are scarce and often ambiguous. Some accounts tell of former Vestals who did leave the order and marry successfully. However, it is widely believed that a significant number, perhaps even the majority, chose not to leave. They chose to remain within the atrium vesti, living out the rest of their lives as revered and respected elders, still attended by the temple's staff, retaining their comfortable lifestyle and their high status within the only sisterhood, the only family, they had ever known. This is the great and profound dilemma at the heart of your new freedom. The ceremony is over. You have been released from your vows. And now you stand at the great, open threshold of the house of the Vestals, looking out into the bright, noisy, and chaotic world of the Roman Forum. The choice is now, for the first time in your life, entirely your own. The ceremony is over. The Pontifex Maximus has departed. You stand at the great, open threshold of the atrium vesti, the home that has been your entire world since you were 6 years old. Before you is the bright, noisy, sun-drenched, and chaotic world of the Roman Forum. Behind you is the quiet, cool, ordered, and sacred world of your long service. You are no longer bound by your vow. You are free. And you must now make the choice of a lifetime. Your first path is the path of the world. You can walk out of this gate right now and never return. You are a woman of immense prestige and, from your long state salary and any inheritances, a woman of considerable independent wealth. You would be the most eligible and sought-after bride in all of Rome. You could marry a great senator, a triumphant general. You could become a powerful Roman matrona, the respected mistress of a magnificent household. You could, perhaps, even have children, a family of your own. You could experience the worldly life of romantic love, of passion, of family politics, of all the human joys and sorrows that you have only ever been allowed to witness from a sacred and protected distance. It is the life you were born for, and the life you were taken from 30 years ago. But this path is filled with unknowns. You are a stranger to this world. You do not know its intimate social rules, the subtle dance of a Roman marriage. You are a woman in your late 30s, considered old for a first-time bride in a society where girls are often married in their early teens. And to marry, you would have to surrender the unparalleled legal independence you hold as a Vestal and once again come under the legal authority of a man, your new husband. It is a leap into a beautiful, but completely foreign world. Your second path is the path of the goddess. You can turn your back on the noisy forum, and walk back into the cool, familiar quiet of the atrium vesti. You would no longer be a serving priestess with the relentless, daily duties of the flame. You would be a Vestalis senior, a revered pensioner of the state. You would retain your luxurious private rooms, your high status, your legal and financial independence, and the respect of all of Rome. Your role would be that of a revered elder, a teacher and a guide to the new novices, a living repository of the sacred traditions. This is the path of safety, of comfort, of immense respect. It is the world you know. It is the sisterhood that has been your only family. To stay is to embrace the life you have perfected. It is to choose the quiet, sacred power of the revered priestess over the worldly, domestic power of the wife. It is to choose the familiar comfort of the holy over the uncertain promises of the profane. Historians debate the reasons why so many Vestals, it is believed, chose to stay. Was it a choice born of pure, unwavering devotion to the goddess Vesta and a desire to continue a life of service? Or was it, perhaps, a more pragmatic and worldly calculation? Was the unique power, freedom, and prestige they held as an independent senior Vestal simply a more attractive and powerful position than the one they could hope to achieve as the wife of even the most powerful senator in Rome? You stand at the threshold, a woman caught between two worlds. It is the ultimate question of your identity. After 30 long years, are you still Licinia, the daughter of a great patrician house, who can now, at last, return to her original destiny? Or are you, in your very heart and soul, now simply a Vestal, a woman whose entire being is so completely intertwined with this sacred house and its eternal flame that to leave it would be to lose yourself entirely? You look out at the bright, chaotic, and loud world of the Forum one last time. You feel the sun on your face. And then, with a quiet and final resolve, you turn away from the light. And you walk back into the cool, silent, and familiar shadows of your home. You stand at the great, open threshold of the atrium vesti. Before you is the bright, noisy, and chaotic world of the Roman Forum, a world of politics, of commerce, of families, a world that could now be yours. Behind you is the quiet, cool, ordered, and sacred world that has been your entire life. You take one last, long look at the sunlit world of men. And then, with a quiet and final resolve, you turn away from the light, and you walk back into the familiar, sacred shadows of your home. You have made your choice. Your new life begins. You are no longer a serving priestess, bound by the relentless, daily duties of the flame. You are a Vestal senior, a revered pensioner of the state. Your life is now one of immense respect, of quiet contemplation, and of teaching. You have become the living memory of your sacred order. When a new, frightened 6-year-old girl is chosen by the Pontifex Maximus and brought to the Atrium Vesti, it is you who now greets her. You see in her wide, terrified eyes a perfect reflection of yourself, 30 years ago. And you become for her what the great chief Vestal was for you, her guide, her teacher, her mother in this strange new world. You are the one who now explains the mysteries of the calendar, the secrets of the sacred flame, and the terrible, solemn weight of the great vow. The student has become the master. The circle is complete. The cult of the Vestal Virgins was one of Rome's most ancient and enduring religious institutions, lasting for over 1100 years. Its incredible longevity was a testament to this very process, this quiet, personal, and unbroken chain of knowledge passed from one generation of priestesses to the next. You have found a deep and profound peace in this final stage of your life. The passionate, difficult questions of your youth have been answered. You have faced the temptations of the worldly and the personal, and you have chosen your path. You have found your purpose not in the life of a wife or a mother, but in the silent, eternal service of the goddess and the city. And in that service you have found a deep and abiding contentment. The final image of your life is a quiet and gentle one. You are an old woman now, your hair as white as your linen robes. You are sitting on a marble bench in the sunlit central courtyard of the Atrium Vesti. You are watching a new generation of young novices, their childish laughter echoing in the quiet air. You are content. You are home. And it is on this quiet, final image of a duty fulfilled and a life chosen with peace and purpose that our long journey into the sacred heart of Rome comes to its gentle end. The memory of the sacred fire, flickering in the deep darkness of the temple, the cool feel of the marble floor beneath your feet, the immense, silent weight of the 30-year vow, and the profound, peaceful quiet of the Atrium Vesti. All of these can now begin to soften and fade, like the details of a half-remembered dream. The story is over. The flame is safe. The priestess is at peace. The great city of Rome sleeps under the watchful eye of its goddess. And now you can rest as well.